Okay, I think I'll start. Thank you for coming today. My name is Bob Gezelter. I'm going to be speaking on inheriting and structuring logical names. Logical names are a distinguishing feature of VMS. The only other system I'm aware of that has it was the RSX system's releases after VMS appeared. And people underestimate and underutilize logical names and abuse them. So what we're going to be talking about is that badly thought out logical name usage can be expensive. Less so now in a way than it used to be, but cycles are still cycles. You can always do productive things or unproductive things. Inefficiency in representation impedes performance. Doing it right is not all that hard. It's actually fairly easy. Maintainability. Things change. How many things do you want to change at the same time? Or more importantly, if you have 200 active user accounts and you have to change the login script for each one of them, that is pain. You want, if at all possible, do one change in one place. The computer is a very good cook. It will propagate things happily. Most you want users to do is log out and log in for an application to restart. That's all you want. Anything else is extra work and risk. How you define logical names matters. Am I speaking loud enough to be heard in back? But the acoustics in some of these rooms are weird. Logical names have a context that matters. And you can make a very personalized environment for your users, for your applications, without a lot of work. I had one site that called me for a performance problem many years ago. They had thousands of logical names to find. They also had 30 to 50 users. What was going on? The third-party product they used, which ran completely in user mode, written in Fortran, had a setup file for a user. It defined dozens of logical names for each user. It also, as a side issue, just to keep the world entertaining, never installed the application as a shareable image. They were looking at a multiple tens of thousands of dollars upgrade in memory. They were all running the same image. There were 30 to 50 copies of the image. Change in the linker file. It was Fortran. Shareable, writable was default on common blocks. Change the link map so that the common blocks are no longer shared. To install on the shareable image, on the image. Memory went from here to here. Logical names. 30 to 50 logical names or more per user login. They were all the same, except for the department tree root. Department 1, everything else. Department 2, same step as Department 1, except Department 2, and it went on and on and on. One application, one logical name table for the application, defining the 50 names, all in terms of a name which was then defined in the group table. One group entry, 50 in the application table, insert in search path, voila, no more pool problem. The MS was very happily doing the iterative translation. So we're going to be talking about something else today. That's tomorrow's session in 30 seconds. Some references. We're going to talk about what happens when you spawn processes and related things. Some references points for you. The System Services Manual. The Logical Name Services. Good information. Programming concepts. Good information. The paper I wrote now, 21 years ago on how to inherit logical names in a VMS environment. It's on my website. I have no idea if I don't know if the tech journal made it over to the DSI website. My article is on my website, on my publications page. Logical names are hierarchies. That's what you're taught in the basic programming concepts manual. You have system logical names, group logical names, and so forth. But each machine is different on some level. The sysroot is different. And here is the germ of a lot of things. You look at what VMS engineering did with clusters. You're halfway to the concept. Everything is rooted, the names are the same, but the root is different. But you can modify the hierarchy. It's not just process, group, process, job, group, and system. You can insert things in that path. If you have a product, an application called Fred, and it defines the 50 logical names we're talking about, you can create a separate logical name table for Fred and insert Fred in the search tab. Now, your process logical name table just shrank completely. Instead of tens or hundreds of logical names, you've got none. Basically, it's no effort and it's easy to do. You don't need privileges. It all works by implication. You can override things at any level. Think about this. One problem I've had on a lot of client sites is the scratch disk. Developers need a certain amount of scratch space. There's a system default for scratch space. Groups need scratch space, and production need, and these are not the same entitlement. Well, you set one for the system, or that one for the cluster node. Maybe there's a cluster-wide scratch also on the SAN. A user may have their own default. A group may have its own default, and this all works automatically. You can override it, readjust it at your will. You don't need syspriv to do it. You need sufficient authorization. If you're going to modify the group logical name table, you need group logical name privilege, but you don't need syspriv. You can safely give group name out. You give it to the team leader. You knock yourself out. You screw it up, call. But I don't have to take the phone call. That's your problem. Same thing with application name tables. They can be protected objects. You can protect them to a ID held by a local map product manager. Instant offload. You want to fix that? Be my guest. Fix it. Now the fun part. Remember that 50 to 100 logical names I was talking about before? Well, the default is that the logical name table from a process is propagated to the subprocess. One logical name at a time over what amounts to a mailbox. This is not cheap. If the name table is big, it is definitely not cheap. So when you have programs that do spawns, command file, which is a spawn, which runs a command file, which is another spawn at some point, and so on and so forth, you're dragging this whole sack down the chain on every iteration. That adds up. It adds up in memory use in page 4. It adds up in overhead every time you do a spawn. You can link in tables using L&M file depth in the user's process directory logical name table. Fully documented, fully supported. It's in the programming concepts. The The default for LNM file dev is in system underbar directory, LNM system underbar directory. So it's very easy to modify. A demonstration. This is code you can run in user states. The slides will be online. And my website and VSI will have them. So you can save yourself the trouble. You can define something by just changing element file dev. And here note that I've defined a scratch device to be sys$sysdevice. With me so far? No privileges necessary. Well, if I display the name tables in the local process that I'm in currently, I have all the translations right there. Everybody with me so far? Now, we spawn logical names. Note that the process directory, go back for a second. Notice that the process directory is LNM file dev of process, job, group, and system. When we go back, that's the same. That got copied. Scratch, which is there also, is on the subprocess also. As the /logical on the spawn. When you go to spawn no logical, notice what's missing. There is no definition of LNM file dev in the process directory. And Scratch is no longer in the process table. Now, if you want the definition to be available to subprocesses in this case, you have two choices. Either you use /logical, or you put the logical name in the job logical name table, because the job doesn't change. And a job logical name table will not be copied. It stays in the chain. If you want LNM file dev to be modified for all your current process and all your subprocesses, by the way, including the ones that are currently running, be careful here, you put the definition in the job logical name table. You own that. That's available to every user. If you want an LNM file dev definition, and you want it to propagate without being bodily copied process to process, put it in the job logical name table. If you have a large collection of application-specific logical names, and you want to insert a table containing those logical names into your search path, copy LNM file dev from the system directory, and insert in that string the application logical name table in the job directory. And it will not need to be copied. Is everybody with me on that? The trick is the copying is something that need not be done unless it actually is necessary. It almost is never necessary. Remember, one second, I'll take it in a sec. If you want to override something that's in the job logical name table, just put a copy of the override in the process logical name table, and it overrides. It's very smooth. Now your question.
Okay, so it's better to use the no logical names when you spawn and put the definition in the job.
If it's a definition you want, if you have a lot of things going on. The job logical name table is underused. People just say, no, I'll just spawn. Then you get this pile of crud being copied bodily down by mailbox to the subprocess. Each subprocess you go down, and people come in, why am I running so slow? Well, how many logical names do you have in your process logical name table? Well, I ran that script in login and that script in login, and the other called that one, and the other one called the other one. How many? Oh, 250. Yeah. On a 780 many years ago when I was a lot less gray at university, somebody logged in and complained their login was slow. Okay, we took a look at it. He called 2 or 3 scripts from his login file. And we took those, we opened up those, and they called 3 or 5 scripts each. And then they called, it's the cancel paper flowing down the hallway story. He had piles of logical names, piles of symbol definitions. It was ungodly. And when you spawn, that whole pile of goo has to be shoveled into the subprocess. There's no way to say, pick, I don't want my logical name table copied except for 7, 19, 21, and 15. Doesn't work that way. So what do you do as a systems manager or a product developer or a group leader? You put the stuff that's in everybody's logical name login into a separate table and have everybody inserted in a search path. Then no more room. If it's for them, like, for example, EDT $INR. Everybody loves EDT $INR. Sets modes, set screen 132, set mode, change the screen mode. Okay, that logical probably belongs in job. Be kind of, I'm not going to be trendy about the thing about be intentional or be conscious or any of the other stuff in pop culture, but it has a point. Be conscious of what you're doing and what your people are doing. If a name is needed for all sessions a user is running, it belongs in the job table. That way, no matter how many times they spawn, will be there. If you're running a windowing system, every deck term window is part, if I remember correctly, is part of the same job. So you no longer have to do the login on every window. It's there already in the job table. You start thinking this way, it feeds on itself. All the things that you don't need to define in a process. Only define in a process that which must be in the process. Name tables, yes, when needed. If it's going to be universal for all your windows, for all your sub-processes, goes in the job. You can do show logicals to verify it works as you expect. But this is the point. You look at the tree, use the tree as a tree. It's not just 2 states, system or local or you process. You've got group, you've got job. Use that. It reduces replication. It speeds things up. Nowadays, that's not generally a major concern, but it does count on the margin. It also prevents things drifting out of agreement. If you put it in the job table and everybody's using that definition, it can't get zapped. It'll either hit everybody or nobody, but you can't zap it, it's distorted through acts. the application's logical name tables, which we're talking about tomorrow, you can make sure that they only get modified by an authorized person, either the systems manager or the group applications manager. The regular user can read it and resolve with it, but can't handle. I hate those support calls where it turns out somebody low level managed to zap a logical name and blows their application. If it isn't in their permission range, they can't screw it up. That's one call. That's any calls less you get on every episode. Anybody remember? Probably only one. I remember Windows 3.1. No protection, lots of programs running at the same time in the same address space. What happened? Excel made a mistake and Word blew up. Word did something funky, Excel suddenly went through the roof. No memory protection. Bad idea. Follow the same principle. You have sub-processes for a reason, doesn't mean you have to be sloppy about it. LM file dev. The default is in system directory. Now, I will tell you a very, very somebody help me here. Severe sin. The original sin. Okay, I'll use original. The original sin is blasting when you decide to reset something in the search path, is blasting the string into the process directory. So process, job, group, system. Why? Well, Deck Windows, among others, sticks their logical name table, they use this trick also, into the search string. If you blast the string to your version of what reality is, you will lose whatever else is in there. That is bad. It produces very bad side effects. Like Deck Windows, all your stuff stops working for Deck Windows. What you have to do, and I'll probably make a blog entry about this and a sample piece of script, is you have to go down one element, there's an $X element, you have to iterate through the system directory default element file dev and insert your application table, probably between system and group. And build the new string up and then assign it to the logic. Major software vendors have missed this error. And I have bug reports for years now. They don't work with declaration because they blasted the string without be a good citizen. The string, the system directory has the string. That's the default. Insert yourself into that string, not just reset when you can make a local copy. Now, there's a feature at the moment, which I'm going to report as soon as I get back to New York. I'm to check exactly which file it's in. But when you start up Deck Windows, you end up with two copies of LLM file dev in system in process directory. One is in exec mode, one is not. And they're different. Best guess, somebody left off executive on the command. I don't think it's intentional. I will check. But that's, see what I mean by leverage works both ways? Centralized definition of something, great idea, make sure you get it right. Because if you get it wrong, everybody hurts. The summary is that inheritance is powerful and it increases your efficiency as a manager and raw machine usage. But be intentional. If you spawn and you want the logical names, that's the default. If you don't want the logical names, use spawn no logical. Caution, this can get you burned. If you have this is very important, by the way, in command files. When you write your command files, 99 out of 100 people will just say spawn. They won't be intentional. Now, here's the problem. If they wrote spawn and they had say a equate at their login saying spawn no logical, oops, things won't work as they thought. Vice versa is also true. When you might want to go do an audit of how many people in command files in your installation are using naked spawn. And the question is, what do you want to do as part of policy? I would probably say spawn logicals explicitly. Make sure it's highlighted. Because if you go down multiple levels of nested command files, and somebody makes a presumption the other way, life could get exciting. By the way, for debugging and have an incident, do a show logicals. Be forewarned. If somebody does spawn no logicals and is expecting another command file is expecting something to be propagated, life could get exciting. Things can go bang in light. Things like the scratch file definition get lost and suddenly the job blows up. The danger of setting equates in the login script is that you can command files and other uses can sometimes go awry because they assume default was the behavior. And that's basically the prepared part of the presentation. I'll be happy to answer as many questions as you have until we run out of time.
On no logical, it's just the process logical, the job and the group.
Job and it doesn't copy job and group. They are in the past. The definition. I'm being very lawyerly about this. Read the definition. Spawn logical does not copy the process logical name table. Full stop. It also, I'll go back to those slides, there's a documentation garble. Yeah. Let me go back 1 second, 2 slides back. Okay, notice what's the process logical name table, which is on top. No, I'm sorry, on 1 second. Yeah, no, it's not. Scratch is in front. This is a local result. Yes, okay, Scratch. Yes, Scratch is on the bottom. Right, sorry, it's just it's a very busy slide on the terminal log. Scratch is in the process logical name table. That's documented very nicely in the DCL dictionary and the help text. Now, here's the gotcha. Process directory, which is here, this is in process directory. This is the definitions in the LM directory, which is a concatenated list of process directory and system directory. This is in process directory. Search path is set to process, job, group, and system. Now, group is defined in the group logical name directory because you have to have a group number in there. It's the octal representation of the UIC group. Job is in the directory because job has to have the job number on it. So far, so good. It's actually, I think, the address of the jib, but it's the address of the jib, if I remember correctly. Now the fun part. This is in process. Note these. Now go back down 2 slides. Notice process directory doesn't have LLM file dev anymore. It doesn't say that in the doc. The doc says LLM processing propagated. Process directory is also affected. Good lesson. Read the documentation. It's generally accurate. It isn't always complete. You can get bushwhacked by that. So it'll copy. I have to write that one up also. When I go exploring, I find things. So you can put anything you want in LLM file dev. You can put it in the process directory, job directory. If it's policy for the group, it can be in the group directory. Well, actually, you have to do more. There's no VMS does not create a group directory, group underbar directory. It's not created. But if you follow my example here, you can insert group directory with group directory defined as group underbar directories in the existing default. The nice thing about this is all extensive arbitrarily. It's all even document. It's just not generally paid attention to. You could create a directory in the system. I didn't print this out, so I can't do it that way. I'm not going to unlimber my laptop. The group logical name table is in system underbar directory. I'm going to leave I'm leaving off LNM dollar on the prefix just to not be the tongue twister. There's a system underbar directory and a process underbar directory. There's no reason, and you'll note, yeah, process directory is in process. I don't have it here. Process directory probably expands the process blah, 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 blah directory or something like that. You can do exactly the same thing for group. As a habit, I do all the group directories as part of the startup procedure. I add my own group, creategroupdirectories.com into the startup database. So I, as system manager, can establish all the group, define all the group tables and populate them all at boot. Well, when you're booting, startup is running fully privileged.
You understand? Things.
Yes.
You're talking about creating these things. Jeff, in order to do that,
Yes.
A good start.
Yes. Yes. Actually, to create the group directory, you would need system. You would need system. It has to go in the system. But the point is, you can do that and add it to the system path, and it'll and group directory will translate to group underbar blah 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 directory, and you just go around and around, crank the wheel again. So if your environment needs it, you have these degrees of freedom. Some environments can make use of it. Some environments, not so much. But the nice thing about VMS is you can. If you want to run 5 copies of Apache, which Apache does support, under different UICs, because rather than VMs, you have a traffic director and you just run 5 instances of Apache, 1 for each group, you can have Apache's logical names point to different places on one machine. Why would you do it that way versus VMs? This gets into a different set of conversations. But you can. Could you run Apache with virtual host files? Yeah. Would you want to be able to say this is a separate process in a separate group with a separate protection domain? You might. for security audit purposes. There's all kinds of reasons why you bend in different ways to get to different things. And you have to analyze which one is appropriate in your context. One size does not fit all. Somebody asked me, why would you not just use virtual hosting on Apache? You can host 10 websites in one Apache instance. Well, maybe I've got a service commitment on one set of hosts, and I'm afraid a bug might cause an Apache crash. Or I want to give different quotas to one Apache or not. I can do that with a different UIC. I can't do it within Apache. It depends on your situation, what you're trying to do. Some sites work A works, some sites B works. And it depends on your auditors, depends on your management, depends on what the mission is. There are very many reasons why there's texture in configurations. When you get one size, you've all heard one size fits all, which means no one's shoes fit. That's the story. VMS's nice feature is you can jiggle the various connections, so you can do what you need to do, and it's still a completely supported environment. Why, if you would have Apache, I'm just using Apache as a store man here. There's no reason Apache can't answer on port 8719. And your traffic director in the outside world takes xyz.com, port 80 or port 443 goes to 8719 on this host. It's routine. So do it. Document it by all means, but you can do any of these things. And does it matter? Yeah, it can. Get a application, an environment where part of your mission requires you to do X, Y, and Z. Like you have different customers, and you don't want to explain that customer A's use of Apache in some way crashed customer B's access. The answer is give them two different Apaches, modify the traffic director. If one blows himself up, so be it. It's applied to him, deal with the problem, but you don't have the others affected. Apache is set up to be able to do this. You just have to think about it and document it. Of course, there's the next guy who comes in, look at it. Well, why did you do that? Well, because we don't want customer A and customer B to mutually interfere with each other in some bizarre way, and we want to be able to defend it. We get an order to do it. Here's your piece. It goes to you. Leave me alone. I had one site, which was a data entry bureau. Lots of clients. How do you protect each client's data? Well, we did it with rights list identifiers. And badge, ever been inside a secure place, the ID badges frequently have what I call lucky charms. They are compartment indicators where you're allowed in. And we did that to badge the operators. You checked out on one client's entry project, we administered you the rights identifier for that project. If you hit the menu item when you logged in, check the rights list. If you didn't have the rights to entry, it didn't give you the choice. If you managed to somehow Shanghai that, you couldn't access the files anyway because they were protected to that ankle. Deal with it. It was beautifully effective. We gave somebody a badge, we turned on their rights identifier. They finished the batch, they turned the fire off. No more access. I did a session on that several years ago. Nobody had privileges. Nobody had anything but temp mailbox and net mailbox. And actually, I think in most cases, they only had temp mailbox. They didn't need it, but I give that out. I give that out to college students learning programs. It can't do any damage. That's the way you, again, the reason I'm a very strong advocate of that is it avoids problems. The names propagating in strange ways, or lots of names allow people to play. I don't like playing. You're not, shouldn't be playing, you shouldn't be playing. Oh, I missed anything. Any other questions? Comments?